Okay, thanks, Greg. G'day, everyone. Welcome along. So my name's Stuart Buck, as Greg just mentioned, work for the DAF in Rockhampton, and I've been leading the department's Pasture dieback research and extension for the last 7 or 8 years. And I'll now just quickly introduce or get Polani DAF activities and also talk.
Hi, I'm Polani Shader. So I've been working with DAF for nearly 2 years now as a pasture agronomist with Stuart Buck. I have an electronics background, so I look after most of the drone flights and processing and the trial maintenance.
So the outline of today's presentation, 3 parts to it. There'll be a background that will be presented by Polani, and then I'll be, if I put it that way, so our plant pathologists, the virologists, the entomologists and so forth and their teams have been integral part of our program over many years. We've also had numerous pasture agronomists, biometricians, mapping guys, beef extension staff across the state, and our technical and farm staff. So the work that will be presented today has been a result of all these people's work. I want to also thank the co-funding from the federal government and MLA, and also we've been collaborating with quite a few other organisations, including universities and private companies in recent years too. So thank you very much to all those people. Righto, so I'll hand over to Polani and he'll do the background, and then I'll go from there. So thank you. Over to you, Polani.
All right, so what we have here is a photo of pasture dieback. So here's a drone photo of a paddock that's been severely affected in central Queensland. And in particular, I'd like you to note the dieback stopping at the fence line, which is on the right-hand side. Pasture dieback for us has been affecting Queensland pasture since 2012, and the first paddocks that we saw were in the early 2015. Pasture dieback was first reported in buffalo grasses in central Queensland in the 1990s, but all of the research at the time was quite inconclusive. There was a dieback event in the 1920s in Pasture in South Queensland, but that also had full pasture recovery, so the research after that point died off quite a bit. Dieback has also been occurring in pastures in South America, and in particular it's caused by an insect there, and it has been causing quite devastating effects. So we also here currently have about $50 million worth in production losses in Queensland alone, just from dieback symptoms. So dieback is defined as the death of tropical grasses, typically in patches. Almost all sown grass species have been reported to be affected, somewhere in Queensland, but very few natives have been affected. We've also found that legumes have been completely unaffected by dieback. Dieback actually covers quite a large area of Queensland. So it starts up at the Atherton tablelands and has actually now ventured down into the northern parts of New South Wales. As you can see, the areas in green, that's where dieback has mainly been affecting areas. And so those areas in particular have been of about 700 mils of rain and above. But that area in blue is the new area that dieback is spreading into. It's now spreading into areas with 600 mils and above, and as I stated before, the northern parts of New South Wales. There are four stages or symptoms for dieback. Stage 1 is reddening and yellowing of older leaves. The problem with stage 1, though, with dieback is that misdiagnosis can occur. This reddening and yellowing of leaves are also symptomatic of other problems, for instance, like water or nutrient stresses. Stage 2 is when all the leaves have discolored and the plant looks visually sick. We then step to stage 3, which is dead patches. The patches can be small patches, large areas, or in some cases, entire paddocks. Stage 4 is then when we see broadleaf weeds and legumes. So this is the most obvious stage of dieback. This is when people then understand that it isn't just that area that is dying off, because they can actually see the legumes and the broadleaf weeds bright green amongst all the dead grass. So an example of dieback this is an example of dieback in Rhodes grass in southeast Queensland. So in March 2018, you can see the early stage symptoms. There's slight discoloration and discoloration in the patches throughout. Then if you have a look at the next picture, this is June 2019, and this is the late stage symptoms. This is when all the pasture has died out and just the broadleaf weeds are left there. This paddock gets subsequently fully recovered with spelling and weed control, and no seeding was re-needed as the grass came back from the seed bank. Some examples of how dieback can stop at fence lines are mostly due to differences in pasture utilisation and grazing management. So if you have a look at the left, the photo on the left, you'll see that the dieback stops pretty much right on the fence line. On the left-hand side, the pasture has been grazed. On the right-hand side, the pasture has been ungrazed. What we've found is the pastures that have high biomass seem to get dieback earlier, and also dieback seems to spread a lot quicker through those. In the middle photo, the pastures have been grazed on both sides, but grazed by different owners with different timings. Then on the right-hand photo, you'll see all of the weeds on the left-hand side and then pasture on the right. And so infrequent grazing has occurred on the left, and then rotational grazing has occurred on the right. All of these sites are in central Queensland with buffel pastures. I'll hand over now to Stuart to present the next two sections, starting with the DAF activities.
Thanks, Polani. Yep. So the next section is really a quick summation of what we've been doing the last 7 or 8 years within our DAF program, and then I'll talk more about the management options that we've been talking about too. So the first slide here is just showing a bit of a timeline as to what we've been doing over the last 7 or 8 years. So graziers first contacted us in early 2015 with concerns about their pastures dying, but we didn't quite know the extent of the condition at that time. And so we sort of rallied the troops in 2015-16, and our work really started in earnest in 2016 and continued for many years, mainly undertaking field sampling to try and work out what's causing dieback. And we also started up numerous field trials, including our trials at Brian Pastures near Gayndah and a field trial near Boona in southeast Queensland. We also delivered a couple of grazier forums and produced a number of extension products and also events. And then in 2020, we obtained some funding through MLA, and we set up 2 new projects. One was to research the causes of dieback, and the second was to undertake more engagement activities with graziers. And so between 2020 and 2022, we initiated 5 more on-farm field trials and delivered a heap of field days and workshops, as well as producing more fact sheets, videos, an app, and also a podcast. So with our diagnostic research, we undertook a number of field surveys, heaps of characterizations, and we sort of measured quite a few paddocks with dieback, starting in 2015-16, and that continued right through to 2021. We visited over 150 properties from southern, central and north Queensland, collecting thousands of plant and soil samples from affected and unaffected pastures. And these samples were analysed for a range of pathogenic organisms, including fungi and viruses. So we're looking at whether there's a range of fungi or viruses were also affecting these pastures and therefore causing dieback, or were just part of the mixture of a sort of a disease complex. We also analysed the microbiome of affected and unaffected pastures to better understand the complexity of the biological organisms present in and on affected and unaffected plants. This research included identifying bacteria, fungi, viruses that were present at the time of collection. Our entomology team also conducted field trials, one being at Brian Pastures Research Station in Gayndah to investigate the impacts of the pasture mealybug on bisset gripping bluegrass. This trial was conducted between 2020 and 2021, where 5 treatments were randomly allocated and replicated 4 times. And we can see the cages there in the top, on that top photo where the plots were. A high population of mealybug was already present at the site, as shown in this graph up here. and those numbers actually increase over the period of the trial. The results shown in these bottom two photo collages are showing that where the mealybug was not treated, the pasture developed typical dieback symptoms and died out, which is this left-hand grouping here. Whereas where the pasture mealybug was controlled with insecticide multiple times, the pasture grew quite well without dieback symptoms, despite there still being a small number of mealybugs present, as shown in this graph up here again. If you don't know what the pasture mealybug looks like, here's some photos. On the left-hand side, we've got adult females and some juveniles, also some juveniles in the bottom photo. This yellow circle shows a male mealybug with wings, so he flies around. And the right-hand photo shows some adult female mealybugs on a leaf blade with a finger there, so you can sort of see how small they are. So what did we conclude from all this research to try and understand what's causing dieback? So this slide here basically brings it all together and really concludes our research, like I said, and also brings into effect the observations that we've been seeing in the paddock too, into the causes of dieback. So we believe there are three factors that are needed to occur together for dieback to happen or to occur. The first one is to have the right environmental conditions, and that really means plants or the pastures need to be under stress due to either lack of rainfall or high temperatures or a combination of that in a suitable location. As Polani sort of showed before, in rainfall areas, 600 mils plus is where dieback occurs. The second factor that needs to occur is the right pasture management, and this includes utilisation of pastures, or moderate to low utilisation of pastures, so there's a high biomass most of the time, and also there needs to be susceptible species there as well. And pretty much every sown pasture species has been reported to be affected somewhere across Queensland. And the third aspect is the presence of the pasture mealybug. This is pretty important to have, and these are observed where paddocks have been affected by dieback, and also research has shown that they can cause dieback. But there might be some interactions with secondary infections, particularly fungi and or viruses. So again, the pasture mealybug is what we believe is causing dieback, but to actually have that expressed in the paddock, or dieback to be expressed in the paddock, you need to have all those three factors coming together in that particular situation. What else have we been up to? Well, we've set up, over the last 7 or 8 years, set up 10 field research sites, and 9 of those will be continuing for the next few years in a new project, which I'll mention in a minute. And these sites are and will be investigating management options to restore pasture production, including grass species tolerance. And these two pictures here, the left-hand photo showing our field trials at Bryan Pastures near Gayndah, and the right-hand photo showing our site near Boonah in southeast Queensland. We also held multiple forums, workshops, and other engagement events over the last 7 or 8 years. The first grazier forums were held in 2017 at Biloela and Mara in central Queensland. And then once our field trial and diagnostic research outcomes were available, we then undertook a heap more workshops and other events, as shown in this next slide. So between 2020 and 2022, we undertook more than 20 events across North, Central and Southern Queensland. And this map here on the right shows the locations of where those events were, from Malanda up here in the north, right down to Boonah in the south. And we had, I think we had about 12 or 15 workshops, and we also had a number of forums and other field days as well. And this photo here is showing a field day at our Bryan Pastures research site. We also set up what we call the Pasture Dieback Industry Network in 2020, and that network has over 300 subscribers. Between 2020 and 2022, we sent out 8 newsletters to update members on our activities. And while the actual network is now finished, we plan to start up a network with a new feed-based program called Queensland Pasture Resilience Program. Righto, so that's pretty much about our activities. So this is the last section of this webinar today, which will be about what can be done about pasture dieback, or what management options or solutions are out there. So yeah, so what can be done about dieback? Can dieback be prevented? Well, at this stage, we don't believe there's any reliable or practical prevention strategies currently available. So if you're out there without dieback, there's probably not much that you can do, particularly if you've got the right pasture conditions are in the right location to where dieback can occur, or if dieback is around you, unfortunately. Can dieback be eradicated? Well, at this stage, again, we don't believe there's any cost-effective strategies that really do work for dieback. Again, with this little mealybug, they can be sprayed with insecticides, but we believe it's not really that cost-effective or practical in many situations. So can we manage with it? Well, I think that's the only option at this stage, unless new technology comes along or new research comes to light. At this stage, the only solution for dieback is to manage with it, and we'll talk about what that means on the next slide. So we put together this management option matrix, and we believe there are four groupings or four things that graziers can consider to effectively deal with pasture dieback. And the first one is managing for recovery, second one improving pasture, third one sowing a break crop, and the fourth one controlling the pasture mealybug. Now I'll talk about these in a bit more detail in the next couple of slides, but the reason why there's arrows in all directions here is that a grazier needs to sort of or can work out, well, what's best for me, and that might be one or more of these options. So they might sow a break crop first and then plant and improve pasture, or they might first of all try and manage for recovery through grazing management or whatever it might be, and if that doesn't work, then possibly sow a break crop if they can, improve the pasture and so forth. So it's not saying that one solution fits all. There are multiple different options depending on the situation. So I'll go through these in a bit more detail. So if you look at the first one here, so this table just sort of summarizes those four options again, and then I'll go through what practices we mean for instance, in this case here, managing for recovery. And then we'll talk about, well, whether they are applicable for small patches of dieback, or if you've got large areas, so whole paddocks or multiple paddocks, and then whether you've got arable country, which means you've got good productive soil types and you can get machinery across those paddocks, or if you've got forest type country. And what I mean by that is that it's not as productive, and you might have trees in the way, or it's hilly, or and so forth, and therefore machinery access can be quite restricted. So managing for recovery, the two practices that can be used to undertake this include adjusting the stocking rate, so do a forage budget, or monitor and treat weeds in bare patches. Now, obviously, both of those can actually occur together. Now, I think all of those, adjusting the stocking rate can be done in all those situations, whereas it's a little bit more difficult to treat weeds, particularly if you've got sort of hilly or lumpy country or trees in the way, such as, and there's forest country. So, but yeah, this is what many people are doing, many graziers are doing, and just sort of managing for that recovery. And the concept of managing for recovery is really about not closing your eyes and hoping for the best. It's actually actively managing for that pasture to recover from the seed bank. Got a photo here. Again, Polani showed this this photo on the left-hand side prior to this, and basically, yes, so this is just the site, Rhodes Grass at Boona. So in June 19, it looked like that. And then in January 2021, the pasture looked like that. So, so this pasture has fully recovered from the seed bank without any reseeding, and all that the owner has done there is control the grazing and spray the broadleaf weeds out. So we have quite commonly seen pasture recover without reseeding or other interventions, but the unknown about that is that how long it will take to actually do that. What seed is in the seed bank will dictate what comes back, and the rainfall and the fertility of the soil will also dictate the actual speed of that recovery. And there's also no guarantee that dieback won't come back into those paddocks. So yes, it's a sort of a cheaper option, I suppose, but yeah, there are a few caveats on that, and that it might take some time, and not quite sure what will come back. The second grouping of options here is improving the pasture. So practices here include sowing legumes and tolerant grasses, or applying fertiliser, or cultivating. Now, sowing legumes and grasses can be done in all situations. However, applying fertiliser or cultivation might not be applicable depending on the situation, hence the crosses and a few question marks there on that one. So reseeding with tolerant grasses and legumes has been the standout performer in our field trials, and graziers are also having very good success with this technique. So basically, in effect, just removing what's there and replanting more tolerant grasses and legumes. And so again, these three sort of photos here are just examples from our field trials, and the results of these trials are really resonating with producers after they physically see the outcome. So many producers have gone away from our field days and have actually reseeded their own paddocks too. So what grasses are more tolerant? So this is a bit of a sliding scale here. So on the left-hand side, we've got the species that are very susceptible to dieback, or the pasture mealybug in particular. So I'm sure you've all seen Paspalum and Pangola and Kikuyu. Sabi grass, Bissett bluegrass has been heavily affected by dieback, as is Gainer American buffle. Versus at the other end of the spectrum, we've got Ceterias and some Gatton panicks and Billawheeler buffle grass that are a lot more tolerant. So now pretty much every sown species has been affected by dieback somewhere in Queensland, but there are definitely species that are more tolerant than others. And so the findings of our research and others' researchers has been put together in this little guide here. How do I select grass varieties tolerant to pasture dieback? So, and that's available via the MLA website and also our website, or the Future Beef website too. So I won't talk about that in much more detail. Oh yeah, and before I forget, yeah, legumes are definitely resistant and are definitely an option to sow into areas where dieback is. Okay, the third grouping is sowing a break crop, and what I mean by that is sowing an annual forage or grain crop. So this is used to break a pathogen cycle and to grow high quality short-term feed, with the concept of reseeding a perennial grass legume pasture after that. So you might have 2 or 3 years or 1 or 2 years of an annual forage and then replant a new pasture. As the table shows here, these are only really applicable to the arable situation and widespread. So therefore not really applicable for many of those situations, but we do see graziers, and graziers are planting annual forages as a way to overcome dieback and then replant a new pasture from there. So we've been trialling this option too in our field trial at Bryan Pastures. These photos here show plots over time where it was heavily affected by dieback in November 18. We planted those plots to forage sorghum in May 19, and also second crop in 2020, and then we replanted Bissett bluegrass back into those plots in 2021. And so far to date, those plots look pretty good. We've also looked at lab and oats, and the same results have occurred, that when we've reseeded the Bissett bluegrass have all done quite well subsequently. And the fourth and last option is to control the pasture mealybug by either spraying a pesticide, like an insecticide therefore, or burning the pasture. So while, as I mentioned before, while spraying insecticide can kill mealybugs, there are effective insecticides out there. Based on our research trials and results and grazier experiences, we're suggesting this is not that practical or cost effective to control the mealybug in most broadacre pasture situations. We also have found that spraying insecticides multiple times didn't kill every mealybug anyway, and it's highly likely that these insecticides will negatively impact the beneficial insects as well. So, and those insects are what we want to encourage, not take out or kill. And again, this photo here is just the same photo I showed before of our field trial at Boonah, where we've got about 30 different grass species, and we've actually brought in mealybugs to identify and investigate the tolerances to the mealybug, and the results from this trial have been incorporated into that grass species guide I showed earlier. And also burning. Yeah, so some graziers have been using fire as a way to control the mealybug. Overall, the results so far indicate that the actual benefits are temporary at best, but this might be the only option for some situations where you can't get machinery and so forth, if it's sort of too hilly or too many trees and so forth in the way. These two photos on the screen here are from a producer's property in central Queensland. The photos were taken quite late in the season, sort of May, June, but it does sort of show a bit more healthier grass on the, well, on this left-hand photo on the left-hand side and the right-hand photo right-hand side. So yeah, so burning has been used, but we don't believe it's going to be a really long-term option for restoring production from paddocks affected by dieback. Okay, so that's the full table there. If you would like a copy of this, we actually have just produced a brand new management option fact sheet that will be on the Future Beef website very soon. So hopefully that will be there this week or maybe next week. So look out for that, and all these sort of these slides will be presented in that fact sheet. So please look out for that. Righto, so last section now. So what has the feeling, or how has the feeling on dieback changed in 8 years, and what are graziers doing now? So just a couple of examples of what people are doing. Dieback is still affecting graziers across Queensland, unfortunately, and in recent years, dieback is spreading into southwest Queensland. Overall, producers are still very concerned, but are less panicked about dieback, and this is because we have a lot more answers now than questions. So when dieback first occurred, there was many questions that we couldn't answer, whereas the actual research has occurred and we have a lot more answers now. Some producers are definitely managing their affected paddocks by encouraging that pasture to regenerate, whereas others are taking the opportunity to reseed those paddocks. And one example with the photo on the screen here, this producer in central Queensland has bought a property where dieback was occurring, and he's going to basically grab some machinery from a neighbour or two and basically work up these paddocks that are really heavily affected by dieback, because it's unlikely that they will come back from a grazing management point of view. This photo here is showing a paddock that was planted to desmanthus. So this paddock is in central Queensland in the heartland of buffalo grass country, really heavily affected by dieback. And this producer here has taken the opportunity to reseed a perennial legume, in this case desmanthus, into this paddock here, and basically it's taken the opportunity to actually get legumes into his buffalo grass country, because getting legumes into buffalo can be quite difficult because buffalo is very moisture competitive. And so he just worked that up once or twice and then just broadcast some seed on top. This photo here is showing one of our field trials at Mara. And this field trial is investigating grass legume combinations to address pasture dieback. Due to the success in establishing that pasture, the property owner has followed the same techniques and has planted a new grass legume pasture in an adjacent paddock to our trial. And this is what it looks like when Planty and I were there a few months ago. Actually, it might have been last year, to be honest. But yeah, so he planted rose grass, some buffalo, and some legumes into this paddock here, fully fallowed, and so far it's done very well. Okay, this is my second last slide now. So to wrap up, so to where to get more information. So futurebeef.com.au, we have a web page there called Pasture Dieback, where all this information is currently stored. So there are a number of management guides. Like I said, this is our brand new management guide just here. There's an ID guide, there's a grass variety tolerance guide. We've got 3 videos, also a podcast about how to manage pasture dieback. We've also produced a dieback app to record where it is. If you wish to scan that QR code just here, and I'll take you straight to the pasture dieback page on Future Beef. And that's pretty much it. So thank you very much for listening. Here are contact details if you wish to contact us directly. So Palani and I, and from here I'll hand back to Greg to take over.